Good morning. My name is Deb Strapp and I am the Corps Officer here at the Noarlunga Salvation Army. And what a wonderful journey we've been on this Advent season as we continue to explore the extraordinary details of the coming of our Saviour. This week, as we unpack the details around the town where Jesus was born, we'll discover that even his birthplace, Bethlehem, was no ordinary town. I'm sure, like me, many of you have had the pleasure of exploring our vast country and discovering some of the most beautiful towns we have dotted throughout it. Some of them so small, however, that you pass through them in the blink of an eye. They consist not much more than a few houses and maybe a hotel, a church, and even a petrol station. There are other towns far more inviting and attractive that carry their own sense of identity and heritage through the grandeur of their buildings and their colourful histories. Many years ago, when I was a teenager, my family set out to visit my uncle in a remote town just inside the Queensland border. It was a town called Charleville. It was a very small, obscure town back then, dry, dusty, and hot. But you know what? The people weren't that much different from us. Just a little more countrified, a little more down to earth, and maybe a little more relaxed. And I remember thinking, as sometimes I do now, I wonder what everyday life is like for people who live in such places. Maybe like me, you've visited many different places, but maybe you haven't given them all that much thought until now. So this morning we are going to reflect on another small town, a small town across the other side of the world. And it's located just a few kilometres south of Jerusalem, a town called Bethlehem. Bethlehem, of course, the birthplace of our Saviour. The town of Bethlehem around the time of Jesus' birth had a population of between 300 and 2,000 people. And it could be found on a travel path known as the Way of the Patriarchs. The Way of the Patriarchs was a road that extended from Hebron, just south of Jerusalem, right down to Egypt. And among them, the patriots known to us, like Abraham and Jacob, would have traversed this path. Just imagine it. In the time of King David, Bethlehem was a thoroughfare. You went through on your way to other towns, but later a road was built around it, which meant the town actually was bypassed by travellers. And I'm sure that would have made it a little smaller in many ways. Bethlehem was also an agricultural village known for its fields of wheat and barley. And that's where it's got its name from, because Bethlehem in Hebrew translates to house of bread. It was also known to have flocks of sheep and herds of donkeys and oxen. And it's interestingly enough, it's believed that many of the sheep were destined for Jerusalem, being raised as sacrificial lambs for the next Passover. So even though it was just a little country town, it had significant purpose. Its purpose to feed Jerusalem. But there is even more, and there is always even more when it comes to the things of God, isn't there? The even more is Bethlehem had both a legacy and a promise yet to be birthed. Just as many of our own country towns have given birth to local heroes. I'll share with you just a couple. Do you know that the famous singer Peter Allen was born in the country town of Tenterfield in New South Wales? And the size of the town back when Peter was born was around 2,500 people. And how about Kathy Freeman? Kathy won gold in the 400 metre race at the Sydney Olympics. We would know that. Many of us were there when it happened. She was born in a place called Slade Point near Mackay in far north Queensland. Two significant people emerging from seemingly nowhere. But Bethlehem too had a local hero. And you know who it was? David. David, the youngest son of Jesse, a young shepherd boy who became known for his courage. First he killed a lion, then he went on to become a giant killer. Do you remember who the giant was that he killed? Goliath. His name was Goliath. So from slaying the giant, David, this young shepherd boy from a small, seemingly insignificant town, became a military leader, a strategist, and a warrior for his people. David led the liberation of Israel from his enemies on every side. David was a prophet, a friend of God, a man after God's own heart, a man who from such humble beginnings became Israel's king. So fast forward a few hundred years, and there was a deep longing among the Jewish people to experience once again another reign like David's. And God's promise to David was just that he would establish his throne forever if he and his descendants obeyed and followed him. So there was a sense that when the people returned to God, there was going to be another Davidic king. But it seemed like Bethlehem had been forgotten for hundreds of years. But the Lord speaks, doesn't he? He always speaks. And this time he spoke through his prophet Micah. Still many hundreds of years before the birth of Christ. But he spoke words of hope, words of encouragement. A promise had again been spoken over Bethlehem. The long-awaited Messiah King, the one who was coming to unite the people and to set them free, would come from a little town called Bethlehem. The Messiah, carrying the majesty of the Lord, would bring security and peace the people so longed for. And then there was another promise that came through the prophet Ezekiel. And as we reflect on these two passages, it's evident that the people of God ached for peace. They wanted spiritual renewal, and they yearned for the presence of God. And this is what we want too, isn't it? If we're going to be honest, we want this for ourselves. We want this for our nation. We want this for our world. But the thing is, friends, the promise of a free, whole, unified and flourishing world is found complete in Jesus. And as Jesus was gifted from this little place called Bethlehem, so too Jesus has been gifted to us today. And what we're reminded of here is that God always fulfills his promises, and always just at the right time. Because these prophecies and promises were spoken with nothing forthcoming for hundreds and hundreds of years, I wonder if the people of Bethlehem had thought that God had forgotten them. The people of Israel had been suffocating under hundreds of years of oppressive Roman rule, and they had seemingly settled into this heavenly holding pattern. Their hopes had become little more than smouldering ashes, and maybe you too can relate to this. You've been waiting, you've been feeling overlooked, wondering whether God had forgotten his promises to you. But think about it for a moment. Throughout the Bible, we discover that the disappointments and failures are never the end of the story. Time after time, we see God interjecting and bringing forth new possibilities and moments of grace. And the same happened here, just at the right time. Just at the right time, a census was called. A journey is made. Mary gives birth in a promised place at the appointed time. Bethlehem was no ordinary town. The promised Messiah, the King, born to be our rescuer, our shepherd, our spiritual renewal, our homecoming, our experience of God within us, just at the right time. Although I'm sure it didn't feel just like the right time for Mary and Joseph, trekking on the back of a donkey, heavily pregnant with child. And yet the Lord directed them to Bethlehem so that he could keep his promise to Israel and to the whole world. You know what? I think this is a word that many of us need to hear today. Sometimes we can feel like we have no choice over what path to take. We can feel resentful, we can feel powerless, and yet we see the hand of God through Mary and Joseph's story. From a little town called Bethlehem, God bringing about the redemption of the world. And I want to encourage you today, friends, the Lord of all creation has his hand on you. The inconveniences and redirections you experience in your life can be a gift from God. He's waiting for the right time. He knows when it's best to move things and to change things to bring about his purposes for your life. And he knows when we're ready, really ready. So we need to trust him, friends. Don't push against him, walk with him. Trust that today God may just be redirecting your path into something new that can be redeemed for his glory. You are not forgotten. You are not insignificant. You are loved. You have an extraordinary purpose that will be fulfilled through your life at just the right